Hi everyone. So in this video, we are going to be talking about this concept called ploidy and how it relates to sets of chromosomes, which we are going to be calling homologous pairs of chromosomes. And I know I just threw a lot of vocabulary at you at the very beginning of the video, so let's go ahead and take a look at this a little bit more visually. So these two images shown here are called karyotypes. And a karyotype is just a picture of a person's chromosomes. And they can come in a little bit, you can get different variations. So some are false coloring like these two, some are in black and white. But the big picture is that you're just looking at an image of a person's chromosomes, and hopefully what you can see in both of these is that the chromosomes are coming with a partner. They come as part of a set. So you can see that down here for chromosome 1, there's 2 chromosomes. And over here, there's 2 chromosomes in this picture as well for chromosome number 1. And this is true for all of the rest of the numbers 1 through 22, and 1 through 22. For each of them, there are 2 chromosomes or a pair of chromosomes. And then the sex chromosomes could either be a pair of X's for a chromosomal female or an X and a Y for a chromosomal male. So from this, we can say that chromosomes are usually going to come in a pair, but I do want to draw attention to one difference that you might be noticing between these two pictures of different kinds of karyotypes. So in this one on the left, we can see that for each chromosome, there's a pair. There's 1 chromosome, 2 chromosomes, so a pair of chromosome number 1. But each chromosome itself is not replicated. It's just a single stick, if you want to say that. Whereas if you look over here, there's still 2 chromosomes. So for chromosome number 1, there's a chromosome here and a chromosome here. But each of the chromosomes is replicated. So it's coming in that X form instead. So I just want to make doubly sure that we're all clear that even though there's this difference, we'd still say for both of these karyotypes that there's 2 chromosomes for each number. So I think it's pretty obvious that here there's 2 chromosomes, this one and this one. And for this one over here, there's still only 2. So remember that a replicated chromosome still only counts as 1. So if we look at number 2, this is 1 chromosome, even though it's replicated, and this is 1 chromosome, even though it's replicated. So regardless if a chromosome is replicated or not, it's still just 1 chromosome. And we can see from these karyotypes that in humans, at least, each of our chromosomes comes in a pair. Okay, so when we're thinking about these pairs of chromosomes, we should think about where they come from. Why do we have 2 of each one? And where these chromosomes are coming from they're coming from our genetic parents. One of the chromosomes is coming from your genetic mom, and one is coming from your genetic dad. So if you're getting one from genetic mom and one from genetic dad, then you're going to have 2 total chromosomes for each position along the karyotype. So if we go back to this, we could say this one comes from genetic mom and this one comes from genetic dad, or we could go down here and say this one comes from your genetic mom and this one comes from your genetic dad. So each of our pairs of chromosomes are coming from our mom side and dad side, or we could say maternal and paternal. And because these chromosomes are coming in pairs and it's the same chromosome, but coming from a different source, the word that we use for this is a homologous pair. So a homologous pair of chromosomes are chromosomes that have the same size, they're the same shape, they contain the same genes. So if we're thinking about a chromosome that has a gene for whether you have dimples or not, both of the chromosomes are going to have that gene on it. If we're thinking about a gene that contributes to your hair color, both of the chromosomes are going to have that hair color gene on it. But the difference between the maternal and the paternal chromosomes is that they might not have the same alleles. And when we say alleles, we're talking about just different versions of the same gene. So if we're thinking about that hair color gene, maybe one allele is going to suggest that you have lighter hair, and one allele is going to suggest that you have darker hair. So they both are contributing to your hair color, but not in the same way, right? So they're different versions or different flavors of the same kind of gene, or the same gene itself. So a homologous pair is going to be a chromosome with the same size, shape, and the same genes, but not necessarily the same version of those genes. So here we're showing pictures of homologous chromosomes. And again, just like with the karyotype, they can be unreplicated or they can be replicated. So let's say this green one is coming from your dad's side and this pink one is coming from your mom's side. So we still have a homologous set here because there's two chromosomes, one from dad and one from mom. Or we can look at these same chromosomes once they're replicated, and it's the exact same thing. They're still homologous, and we've got one chromosome from dad and one chromosome from mom. And you can see in this picture, they're the same size, they're the same shape. And like we said, if what's another example? It could be whether you have what's called a hitchhiker thumb or not, maybe. Maybe mom's DNA, mom's gene for that says that you won't have a hitchhiker thumb, but maybe dad's gene for that, it's going to be on the exact same spot, but maybe it says you do have a hitchhiker's thumb. So not necessarily the same version of each gene. So if we go back to our pictures here, we can see that for chromosome 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way through 22, we have a homologous pair for each one of those. So here's the homologous pair for chromosome 16, or we can go over to this one and it's the exact same thing. Down here at chromosome 20, we have a pair, and that's a homologous pair. One came from genetic dad and one came from genetic mom. Okay. So when we're thinking about these sets of chromosomes, our homologous pairs, there's terminology that we can use to describe cells that have homologous pairs. And when we're thinking about cells that have homologous pairs, the word for that is going to be a diploid cell. So cells are diploid if they have two sets of chromosomes. And the sort of notation for that is 2n. So here you can see a diagram. A diploid cell is going to have two copies of each chromosome. So you can see there's chromosome number 1 right here in this purplish pinkish, chromosome 2 in blue, and chromosome 3 in green. And for each one, this cell has two, a pair for each one. So a pair of chromosome 1, a pair for chromosome 2, and a pair for chromosome 3. So this would be 3 pairs of homologous chromosomes. One from mom, one from dad, one from mom, one from dad, etc., etc. So looking at a karyotype like the ones we were looking at last week, all of the cells that we saw were diploid because for each chromosome, there was going to be a pair or a set of 2. So cells with 2 sets of chromosomes are called diploid. There are also cells that are called haploid, and haploid cells have only 1 set of chromosomes. So for each chromosome, a haploid cell would only have 1. So this is shown here. So this is still 3 chromosomes. There's 1, 2, 3 chromosomes, but you can see that for each one, there's just a single chromosome all by itself. It doesn't come in a set. So they're not homologous because they're not the same size, they're not the same shape. They're 3 separate chromosomes. So we have 3 non-homologous chromosomes here. And what that would look like on a karyotype is that for each number, you would just have 1 chromosome all by itself. So haploid cells just have 1 chromosome for each number, or 1 set of chromosomes, and diploid cells have 2 sets of chromosomes. And another way to say that is that diploid cells, their chromosomes come in homologous pairs. Okay, and this is the last slide. So when we're thinking about why this all matters, like what's the benefit of having a diploid cell versus a haploid cell? What does this allow us to do? Organisms like humans reproduce via sexual reproduction. And by having diploid cells, it allows us to combine the genetic material from 2 organisms, from the genetic mother and the genetic father, right? So in order for us to do that, we have to go through some special kinds of cell division in order for the math to come out right for the offspring. So if we think about our cells, which are diploid, so we've got pairs of each chromosome, If we were to just combine the cells of a mom and a dad and make an egg and a sperm and combine those, if the egg and the sperm were still diploid, our offspring would have too many chromosomes. It would have twice as much genetic material as it's supposed to have, right? So when we're going through sexual reproduction, we need to make specialized cells called gametes, which are going to be the egg and the sperm, that have only half of the genetic material of the parents. So for us, since we're diploid, half the genetic material would be a haploid cell. So when we're making sperm and eggs, we make those cells haploid instead of diploid. And that way, when a haploid egg and a haploid sperm come together, it creates the starting cell for an offspring, a zygote, that's has the right number of chromosomes, that has a pair for each one, and a diploid cell. So when we're combining a haploid egg and a haploid sperm, we create a diploid zygote that has the right number of chromosomes, and then it can go through development and have all of the genetic material that it needs. Okay, that's the end of this sort of intro to meiosis, and the next video will go over exactly how this happens. So how do we go from a diploid parent cell to create a daughter cell that's only haploid? And that happens through a process called meiosis, and that'll be the focus of our next video.